Prologue. Friday evening in a Moscow suburb. High-rise smells of fried chicken and children's modeling clay. Lena stood by the sink, scraping leftover porridge from a plate, while in the next room her youngest son loudly argued over a toy car with his older sister. The phone on the table buzzed. A social media notification read, "Your classmate Mark posted a photo, sunset in Barcelona." Lena wiped her wet hands on her apron and froze. The photo showed Mark, the very same one with whom she had submitted internship applications 15 years ago. He stood against the backdrop of the Sagrada Familia, tanned, in a casually unbuttoned linen shirt. Free. Successful. 15 years ago, Lena held the exact same envelope. But that evening, Andre, then just a messy-haired student with burning eyes, came to her with a massive bouquet of daisies and a ring bought with 3 months of his academic stipend. "I can't do this without you, Len. Don't leave. We will build everything here together." And she stayed. She chose love. She chose we instead of I. The front door slammed. Andre returned. He looked gray with exhaustion, his shoulders sagging under a heavy jacket. "Hey, Mom," he said, kissing her on the temple. He smelled of gasoline and cold wind. Got held up at the sight. "But they promised a bonus next month. We'll be able to pay off part of the mortgage early." He walked into the kitchen, sat heavily on a stool, and began unpacking grocery bags from a discount store. The cheapest apples, milk on sale. He did it with such diligence, with such devotion to their shared everyday life, that Lena felt sickened by her own ingratitude. He loves her. He works himself to the bone for this little world of 4 walls. But inside her, somewhere beneath her ribs, the Lena who had once brilliantly defended her thesis in English was screaming, "This isn't me. I was supposed to be there, in that photograph, in that life." "Lyall, what's wrong?" Andre noticed her stare. "Tired? Go lie down, I'll finish washing up and put the kids to bed." There was so much genuine tenderness in his voice that Lena wanted to burst into tears. She looked at his calloused hands and thought, is love a sufficient justification for burying your talent? 2. Chapter 1. Dust on the windowsill. Monday morning for the Kornilov family always began with defeat. Lena stood at the stove, stirring oatmeal that threatened to burn. Water roared in the bathroom. Andre was trying to wash up while 5-year-old Sonia demanded exactly those pink tights, which, naturally, were in the laundry. "Len, have you seen the keys to the site?" Andre shouted, running past the kitchen in one sock. Lena didn't answer. She stared at a narrow strip of light on the windowsill, where dust was clearly visible. Every morning she wiped it away, and every morning it appeared again. Just like these pots. Just like this feeling that her life was an endless run in a wheel that rolled nowhere. 15 years ago, she planned to defend her dissertation at the Sorbonne, but today her greatest achievement was successfully removing a gouache stain from the carpet. "Thanks, sweetheart. Without you, we'd all be buried in mess." Andre quickly kissed her on the temple, which smelled of onions and cheap shampoo, and ran out. Lena remained standing by the sink. She loved him. But sometimes this love felt like a heavy iron ball chained to her leg, keeping her from taking flight. 3. Chapter 2. Cold coffee and slippery tiles. The weekdays sucked Lena in like a swamp. Monday morning, Sonia didn't want to go to kindergarten because her tights were itchy, and the youngest, Tyoma, smeared porridge all over his face and a new t-shirt. Andre had already left for the construction site, at 6 a.m., just to beat the traffic. At lunchtime, Lena managed to break away to meet her university friends. Katya and Alya sat in a downtown cafe, bright, loud, smelling of freedom and expensive perfume. "Lena, you look tired," Katya gently touched her wind-chapped hand. "We were just discussing the alumni reunion. Remember Mark? He's in Berlin now, what a rise. And yet, you were top of the class back then, even better than him." "I chose family," Lena replied hollowly. "Andre is a wonderful husband." "Wonderful," Alya nodded, examining her flawless manicure. "But you dreamed of something else. Remember how you studied German all night? Is a life of pots and parental group chats really enough for you?" Her friend's words stung. Lena left the cafe, her insides boiling with resentment and self-pity. It had frozen outside. She ran toward the subway, wrapping herself in her old down jacket, a thought hammering in her head, I could have been there. With Mark. In Berlin. Her foot suddenly slipped on the icy tile. Lena flailed her arms, trying to keep her balance, but the world flipped. A dull thud at the back of her head, a flash of pain, and silence. 4. Chapter 3. The Glass Ceiling of Berlin. Lena opened her eyes. It didn't smell like dirty snow, but like an expensive sandalwood and leather room fragrance. She was sitting in a spacious leather armchair. In front of her was a massive glass desk covered with documents in German. Frau Kornilova, have you reviewed the report? A voice asked. Lena gasped. She was wearing a flawless white business suit. On her wrist was a watch worth 2 of her suburban Moscow mortgages. She walked over to the window. Berlin. The TV tower. The sky draped in expensive gray silk. She had this life. No children. No Andre. Only the status of managing director and a vacant, cold apartment in a prestigious neighborhood. She quickly looked herself up on social media, photos from the opera, from Paris, from business dinners. In every picture, she looked perfect, but her eyes seemed dead. 5. Chapter 4. Sharks in Suits. In this new reality, Lena quickly realized that weakness was not tolerated here. Her main rival was Christian, an ambitious vice president who marked her seat. Elaine, I took the liberty of adjusting your calculations for the Chinese deal. Christian entered her office without knocking, a glued-on smile on his face. You seem distracted lately. Maybe you need a vacation? A long, indefinite one? Lena saw the cold calculation in his eyes. In this life, she had no backup. If she fell here, no one would extend a hand to her like Andre did on the snowy sidewalk. Here, they finished you off for falling. 6. Chapter 5. The Hook. That evening, Lena discovered that the files for her core project had vanished from her cloud storage. An hour later, an email arrived from an anonymous address, screenshots of her personal correspondence, taken out of context and compiled to look as if she were leaking insider information to competitors. Christian had framed her professionally. The trap had sprung. If she couldn't find proof of her innocence before the board of directors meeting in 3 days, her career, the only thing she possessed in this reality, would be destroyed. She sat in her vast, empty apartment, staring at a bottle of expensive wine. She wanted to cry, but she couldn't remember how. In this life, she had forgotten how to ask for help. 7. Chapter 6. An invitation from the past. In the midst of this nightmare, a notification popped up in her inbox. A social network she barely used in this reality. Alumni reunion, 15 years since graduation. Moscow. Welcoming all stars. In the list of attendees, she saw him. Andrei Kornilov. In his profile picture, he stood against a wooden log cabin, tanned and smiling. Next to him was a woman, short, simple, wearing a funny beanie. And 2 boys who looked remarkably like him. Lena's heart, which seemed to have turned into a piece of Berlin steel, ached painfully. He is happy, she whispered. He's happy without me. She looked at Christian's threatening email, then at Andrei's photo. Suddenly, the Lena who could do anything woke up inside her. She made up her mind, she would fly to Moscow. She had to see him. She had to understand if this brilliant Berlin was worth the emptiness she now felt. 8. Chapter 7. Dancing on Broken Glass. The board meeting was scheduled for Thursday morning. Christian sat opposite Lena, leaning back casually in his chair, already anticipating his triumph. We have received alarming information regarding data security, the chairman began, looking at Lena over his glasses. Elaine, how do you explain these screenshots? Lena felt everything trembling inside, but outwardly she remained stone-faced. In this reality, she had learned to hide fear, it was her only armor. Instead of making excuses, she laid a tablet on the table. These screenshots are a crude forgery, her voice cut through the room like a whip crack. Furthermore, over the last 48 hours, I conducted an internal audit of the system logs. The requests to download this data originated from the IP address assigned to the home office of Christian. A heavy silence fell over the room. Christian turned pale. He hadn't expected that a cornered Lena would recall her top analyst skills over 2 sleepless nights and expose his game. I am not just defending myself, she added, looking Christian straight in the eye. I am defending the reputation of the firm, which people like you are willing to burn down just for a promotion. She won. Christian was removed from the game. But as she stepped out of the conference room, Lena felt no joy. She went into the restroom, locked herself in a cubicle, and simply rested her forehead against the cold tile. Victory tasted like ash. She had power, but she didn't have a home where someone would simply hold her and say, "It's okay, you did it." 9. Chapter 8. Ticket to the Past. Later that day, Lena stood in Brandenburg Airport, holding a ticket to Moscow. She could have flown business class, but for some reason, she chose regular economy, as if trying to get closer to the Lena who once counted every penny. She didn't sleep on the plane. She looked at the clouds and wondered what she would say to Andre. "Hi, I'm the woman who abandoned you for this Chanel suit." Or, "I made millions, but every night I dream of the smell of your old jacket." Moscow welcomed her with biting snow and traffic jams. The city felt simultaneously familiar and infinitely alien. She booked a room at the National Hotel overlooking the Kremlin, a luxury that the suburban Lena only saw in movies. But looking out the window at the lights of Tverskaya, she dreamed of only one thing: to be in that cramped kitchen right now, hearing her children argue over toys. 10. Chapter 9. The Golden Hall and Ghosts. The restaurant hosting the reunion was bathed in warm light. Lena walked in, and the music seemed to quiet down. She was flawless, a black sheath dress, not a single detail out of place, the gaze of a confident woman. "My God, Lena. Is it really you?" Katya, her friend from her first life, rushed over to her. But this was a different Katya. In this reality, she wasn't a successful lawyer. She looked older, wore an inexpensive dress, and her eyes bore the exhaustion of an endless struggle to get by. "We tell legends about you," Katya chattered, looking at Lena's ring. "Berlin, contracts. How did you do it? We're all stuck in a rut here, but you're like a comet." Lena listened to her and realized, in this reality, her friends hadn't achieved anything because they didn't have a successful Lena to pull them up or inspire them. She was the only one who broke free, but the price of that breakthrough was too high. "Where is Andre?" Lena finally asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "He'll be here soon," Katya smirked. "He's a big deal now. Owns a construction firm, gets contracts all over the region. Married a quiet girl, she bore him 2 boys. He pined for you for a long time, couldn't look at anyone for about 3 years. But life moves on." At that exact moment, the door swung open. 11. Chapter 10. A gaze across the chasm. Andre entered the hall as if he owned the place. He was not that gray-faced, exhausted laborer from her visions. Broad shoulders, a confident stride, a classy but unpretentious jacket. He laughed, clapped someone on the shoulder, until his eyes met Lena's. Time froze. He stopped. The smile slowly vanished from his face. Everything flashed in his eyes, the resentment of a decade ago, bewilderment, and cold curiosity. "Hello, Elena," he said, walking up to her. He smelled of expensive wood and tobacco. "Long time no see. They say you're a big shot in Europe now?" "Hello, Andre," she barely found the strength to reply. "I just work. And you've changed." "I had to," he shrugged. "When you left, I realized there was no one else to rely on. I had to grind for 2, just to prove. I don't even know to whom. Myself, probably. That I am worth something even without your ambitions." There was a bitterness in his words that he didn't even try to hide. Lena understood, in this reality, her departure served as a powerful kick for him. He became successful to get even with her success. But there was none of that tenderness in his eyes that used to warm her in that poor life. "Are you happy?" she asked the most important question. Andre looked at his wife, who was just entering the hall, adjusting a loose strand of hair. "I have everything a man needs. Order, a safe haven, children. And happiness, that's too grand a word for our age, don't you think?" 12. Chapter 11. The morning after the ball. Lena couldn't sleep. The luxurious room at the National pressed down on her with silence. She kept replaying Andre's gaze in her head, cold, locked away like a steel safe. In the morning, she invited Katya and Alya for breakfast at the hotel restaurant. Her friends arrived looking weary, with shadows under their eyes. Katya hungrily drank orange juice, while Alya nervously spun a napkin in her hands. "Listen," Lena set her cup down. "Yesterday, when Andre walked in, why did I feel like I was looking at a stranger? He used to be different. Not just poorer, he was brighter." The friends exchanged looks. Alya lowered her eyes, and Katya sighed heavily. "Len, we've kept this secret for so many years," Katya began quietly. "We thought it was for the best. You're over there in Europe, you have a career. Why did you need to know? But now, seeing you like this, unhappy in your diamond cocoon." "What are you talking about?" Lena's heart skipped a beat. "Remember the day before your flight?" Alya finally looked up. Andre ran into the dorm back then. He was shaking. "He wrote you a letter, 5 pages about how he was ready to go with you, that he found a way to get a visa, that he was willing to wash floors there just to be by your side. He begged you not to fly away alone, to wait for him for just a week." Lena felt a lump form in her throat. I never received any note. He just came with daisies and a ring, said stay. And when I said I couldn't, he just walked away. Because Rita intercepted that note, Claudia pronounced the name like a sentence. The very same quiet girl who is his wife now. She was 2 classes below us, followed him around like a shadow, and you never even noticed her. She saw him in the hallway, he was desperate and asked her to drop the letter off at your dorm room. And she didn't deliver it? She burned it, Len. And she told Andre that she saw you read the letter, laugh, and throw it in the trash, saying that you don't need a beggar in Berlin. He broke down then. That same night he went on a wild bender, and Rita was right there, comforting him, nursing him. That's how she became his savior. 13. Chapter 12. The Right to Anger. Lena sat motionless. All this time, she thought her life in Berlin was her own conscious choice. It turned out to be a masterclass in manipulation. She had spent 15 years living someone else's artificial life simply because someone else had decided for her. Why did you stay silent? She whispered. We only found out a year later, at their wedding. Rita let it slip to Alia when she was drunk. Claudia sniffled guiltily. But you were already a big boss by then, with contracts and exhibitions. We were afraid to ruin everything. We thought you wouldn't believe us. Lena stood up abruptly. Anger, genuine, raw, and burning, finally banished her Berlin chill. She no longer felt like a successful project. She felt like a woman whose children had been stolen, whose evening smell of fried chicken had been stolen, and whose husband, who was once ready to do anything for her, had been stolen. She left the hotel without a coat. Snow fell on her shoulders, but she didn't feel it. She walked down Mokavea, a single thought echoing in her head. This isn't my reality. I don't want to be here. Even if I am a queen here, this is not my throne. She reached the very spot where she had slipped in her other life. Now it was dry and clean. Lena stopped. She closed her eyes and pictured Sonechka, Tyoma, and Andre with all her might, the one in the old jacket, smelling of gasoline. Please, she whispered. I understand now. I don't need Berlin. I need my itchy tights and my dusty windowsill. She took a step forward, intentionally looking for a patch of ice that the street sweepers hadn't cleared yet. Her foot slipped. The world tilted once more. 14. Chapter 13. The Confrontation. Lena couldn't just leave. Her pride, nurtured by years in Berlin, demanded closure. She found the address of Andre's office, a modern building made of glass and wood, completely unlike the construction trailers he used to disappear into during her past life. She walked in without an appointment. The secretary tried to stop her, but Lena gave her such an Iron Lady glare that the woman backed off. Andre sat at his desk, studying blueprints. Seeing Lena, he slowly took off his glasses. Elena? I thought you were already on your way to your airport. I found out about the letter, Andre. She didn't beat around the bush. She walked up to the desk and leaned her hands on it. I found out that Rita burned it. I didn't throw it in the trash. I didn't even know it existed. Andre froze. A whole spectrum of emotions flickered across his face, from shock to painful recognition. But a second later, he collected himself. His face turned back into a mask. And what does that change? He asked quietly. How can you say that? Lena exclaimed. It changes everything. We were deceived. We were robbed of our choice. You lived with a woman who built your happiness on a lie. Andre stood up and walked to the window. You know, Len, when I was 20, that letter meant more than life to do with me. I waited for an answer for a week. I didn't sleep. I staked out your building, but Rita told me what she told me. And I believed her. Why? Because you were always looking over there. He pointed toward the horizon. You always wanted more. But she was looking at me. But it was a lie. Yes, it was a lie. He turned around sharply. But that lie was followed by 15 years of devotion. She stood by me when I went bankrupt. She gave birth to my children while you were signing contracts. What am I supposed to do now? Throw her out? Tell my sons that their mother is a schemer and destroy their world for a ghost from the past who flew in from Berlin in €1,000 shoes? Lena stepped back. She had expected him to rush to her, to be outraged, to want to undo everything. But before her stood a grown, stranger of a man, for whom stability was more precious than the truth. 15. Chapter 14. The Uninvited Guest. Later that evening, as Lena was packing her bags at the hotel, there was a knock on her room door. Rita stood on the threshold. She didn't look guilty. She possessed the quiet, primal determination of a mother protecting her nest. Andre told me you came by, Rita began, not waiting for an invitation. She walked in and sat in an armchair. You want justice, Lena? Want to claim back what's rightfully yours? You stole 15 years of my life. Lena's voice shook with rage. You built your family on theft. And would you have given him what I gave him? Rita smiled bitterly. Would you have lived with him in a construction trailer in the Tver region? Would you have endured his night shifts, his failures, his depressions when nothing worked out? No. You would have bolted to your Berlin at the very first opportunity because you are a comet. You need to shine. But Andre needed a hearth. That wasn't for you to decide. I decided, Rita snapped. And I don't regret it. Look at him now. He's made it. He's confident. He loves his children. No, he didn't become the genius architect you dreamed of, but he is a happy man. Now look at yourself. You have everything. And you have nothing. Leave us alone, Lena. Your time ran out 15 years ago. When Rita left, Lena felt a freezing emptiness wash over her. She realized a terrifying truth. Even if she told the whole world right now, even if Andre left Rita, it wouldn't bring back those two young students in love. That Lena died on the Moscow-Berlin flight, and that Andre vanished when he burned her old photographs. She was successful. She was wealthy. She was avenged, but she had never been so completely alone. 16. Chapter 15. The trap closes. The moment Lena stepped into her office, she felt it. The air had changed. Employees who used to greet her obsequiously now averted their eyes or suddenly buried themselves in their monitors. 2 security guards stood by her office door. Frau Kornilova, your badge has been deactivated, one of them said coldly. You are only permitted to collect your personal belongings under our supervision. What is the meaning of this? Lena felt her insides turn to ice. Where is Christian? The board recognized his guilt. The board reversed its decision after new evidence was discovered. Christian himself stepped out from behind the guards, beaming. You know, Elaine, your trip to Moscow was very well timed. While you were reminiscing, the IT department found a hidden archive on your home server. Direct transactions to competitors' accounts, bearing your digital signature. Lena froze. She knew she hadn't signed anything, but she also knew Christian. He hadn't just adjusted numbers, he had staged a massive fabrication while she was away in Moscow. He used her absence to frame her trip as an escape attempt. This is a lie, she whispered. You know I was at a graduation reunion. Who cares? Christian stepped closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. In this world, it doesn't matter what actually happened. What matters is what is documented. You were a brilliant player, Elaine. But you made a textbook mistake. For a brief moment, you became human. You allowed yourself emotions. And in our business, feelings are a vulnerability. She was handed a cardboard box. Her entire successful Berlin life fit inside it, a designer pen, a family photo showing only her alone against the Eiffel Tower, and a couple of Top Manager of the Year awards. 17. Chapter 16. The bottom of the golden cage. She stood on the street outside her glittering skyscraper, clutching the box to her chest. People in expensive suits passed by, Berlin's life continuing to hum, oblivious to the disappearance of one of its stars. Lena returned to her empty apartment. Her accounts were frozen pending the investigation, and company lawyers were already drafting a lawsuit. Everything she had sacrificed, love, children, and that messy-haired student with daisies for had evaporated in a single day. She sat on the floor in the middle of her perfect, sterile living room. So, that's it? She asked the emptiness. I gave up everything for this success, and it turned out to be nothing but a prop? She remembered the Lena from the suburbs. That Lena was probably crying right now too, from mortgage stress or pure exhaustion. But that Lena had Andre, who would bring her tea right now and say, we'll get through this. That Lena had children whose warm little hands could wipe away any tears. But this Lena had nothing. Just a box of useless awards and the realization that her life wasn't just a mistake, it was a cruel joke. 18. Chapter 17. Point of no return. Lena realized she didn't want to fight for this reality. She didn't want to prove her innocence to Christian or the board of directors. She didn't want to be a managing director in a world where everyone had betrayed her, from her best friend to the man she loved. She walked up to the mirror. A beautiful, wealthy, but utterly dead woman stared back at her. I want to go home, she said loudly. Do you hear me? I want to go back. Let it be hard, let there be dust, let there be a lack of money, but let me be alive. She recalled how it happened the first time. A sharp movement, a slip, an impact. She looked at the panoramic window of her apartment. Too high, too terrifying. She remembered that icy sidewalk in Moscow. She grabbed her coat and ran out of the apartment. She took a taxi to the old dormitory building where she and Andre used to live. In this reality, it stood there too, gray and unwelcoming. There was a short set of stairs before the entrance to the dormitory. Just like 15 years ago, ice had formed on them. Lena stood on the top step. Her heart pounded in her throat. If I'm wrong, I'll just break my neck, she thought. But if I stay here, I'll die inside. She closed her eyes, conjured up the image of Andre, not the cold businessman, but hers, smelling of gasoline, and stepped into the void. 19. Chapter 18. The exact same ice. The impact wasn't as painful as the first time. The world around Lena didn't shatter into shards. Instead, it seemed to slowly flow back into its proper shapes. Cold asphalt, the smell of exhaust fumes, shouts of passers-by, and the distant rumble of commuter trains. Lena, can you hear me? Andre was already by her side. He wasn't wearing an expensive suit, his jacket was stained with chalk, and his fingers touching her face were cold and rough. But they were his fingers. The exact ones. Lena opened her eyes. Above her was a gray suburban Moscow sky, and it looked more beautiful to her than all the Berlin sunsets combined. I'm here, she rasped, grabbing his hand. Andre, I'm here. Thank God. You hit your head so hard. Dizzy? Come on, try to stand up, just take it slow. He carefully lifted her, wrapping his arms around her waist, holding her close. Lena buried her face in his shoulder. Her head was still ringing, but the emptiness that had tormented her in Berlin was gone. She felt his heartbeat, fast, anxious, alive. 20. Chapter 19. A different plan. That evening at home, everything was as usual. Sonia was cranky, Tyoma had scattered Lego pieces everywhere, and the kitchen faucet kept dripping. But Lena saw it through different eyes. She no longer felt trapped. She felt like someone who knew the true value of every fleeting moment. Andre sat in the kitchen, pressing a bag of frozen peas to the back of Lena's head. You know, Lyall, I was thinking. He hesitated, not looking her in the eye. You're right. You shouldn't be wasting away here. You're so smart, your English, your analytics. Maybe I can take on another construction site, and we can save up for some professional development courses for you. Or you could try applying to that international firm you talked about. I'll handle the kids, honestly. We'll figure something out. Lena looked at him and smiled. She remembered Rita from that other reality and the letter that never arrived. In this life, she wouldn't let them be torn apart again. No, Andre, she took his hand. We aren't going to save up for me. We are going to plan for US. What do you mean? He didn't understand. Exactly what I said. I'll find a remote job at an international company. It's 2026, Berlin can be right inside our laptop. And you always wanted your own firm, remember? You're a talented builder. We won't pay off the mortgage early by pinching pennies on every loaf of bread. We'll invest that money into your equipment and my license. Andre raised his eyebrows in surprise. Are you serious? That's a risk. The real risk is living your whole life thinking you aren't worthy of something, Lena said firmly. I've seen what you can be, Andre. You're strong. And I'm strong. We don't have to choose between love and success. We'll take both. 21. Epilogue. A year later, the same suburban high-rise apartment still smelled of modeling clay and occasionally fried chicken, but there was less dust on the windowsill, not because Lena wiped it fanatically, but because there was simply more air in the apartment. Lena sat at her computer, finishing a report for a major logistics hub. A letter glowed on her screen. Frau Kornilova, your optimization project has been recognized as the best this quarter. A noise came from behind. Andre had returned from work. He looked tired, but in his hands he held not discount grocery bags, but the blueprints for his own first contract for a custom country house. Well, how is my Berlin lady? He winked, wrapping his arms around her. The kids are at grandma's, the report is submitted. Shall we go to the movies? Lena closed her laptop and hugged him back. She knew there were still many difficulties ahead, the mortgage still loomed over them, and the kids would keep losing their tights. But now she knew the main thing, her talent wasn't buried. It had become the foundation of their shared home. She no longer dreamed of that life, because this one, with all its smells, noise, and dripping faucet, was the only one in which she was truly happy.